Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. If you've walked along Burlington's waterfront, you may have seen the University of Vermont's research vessel, the Melosira. When it's not in its familiar slip alongside the Echo Leahy Center for Lake Champlain, the Melosira is out on the lake assisting scientists with water sampling and other research efforts. And now you can go too. UVM Extension and the Lake Champlain Sea Grant program are offering public tours for citizen scientists to take in the science, scenery, and story of Vermont's Great Lake. Here's the Sea Grant Education Coordinator to tell us more.
The University of Vermont and the Rubenstein School is excited to be offering public trips out on a research vessel this summer. We started last year with a series that had 2 different trip themes, and we've kind of increased our offerings, so more throughout the summer. And we're looking to get folks to join us, hear a little bit about the research and what's happening on the lake, engage with some of the cultural and geologic history, and then get a better understanding of what's happening here in our watershed in Lake Champlain.
How many islands do you think there are in this lake?
You're going out on the Melosira, usually it's a kind of a morning or afternoon trip, and you're getting to just kind of take in the beauty of Lake Champlain and see what other folks are up to for sure out there on recreational boats, but then also learn a little bit more and dive deeper. So kind of taking in the ambiance and then balancing that with kind of gaining a new connection or understanding of the waterways here in Lake Champlain.
210? Yeah.
What sort of science takes place on these trips?
So on one trip, it's called Lake Champlain Live. That trip is really geared towards kind of basic limnology, which is lake science. So we're actually using some of the equipment that our researchers use out on the vessel. We'll get to grab some samples, do some water quality testing. We'll do a vertical profile of the lake. So actually, depending on where we are, whether we're in Burlington Bay or out in the main lake, we'll actually take a vertical profile and we'll get to see temperature, depth, kind of dissolved oxygen, some of those different metrics, as well as chlorophyll A, which is neat to look at algal biomass.
And what do you hope that people take away from the limnology, from the science that goes on here?
Yeah, I think part of it is just there's a lot happening. Lakes are really complex and dynamic systems, and just looking out over the lake, you kind of miss some of that. And so we're trying to get folks to dive a little deeper and think more critically about the complex systems happening under the water, but also what's happening on land that's impacting those. And so getting an understanding of the science and what's happening in that moment, but also making broader connections to understand what's happening on the landscape and how that impacts water quality. Stories of Lake Champlain is our trip that's really focused on cultural and geologic history. So that trip actually visits Red Rocks over off of kind of the southern portion of Burlington. We go out to Rock Dunder, which is an Abenaki cultural site, and then we also go over to Lone Rock Point, which shows the Champlain thrust. And so getting to talk a little bit about some of that kind of really wonderful world-renowned geology that we have right here on the shores of Lake Champlain.
And history, it sounds like, as well, with the Abenaki side of it.
History, and then there's a couple shipwreck opportunities that we pass kind of in that trajectory. So exploring those and learning a little bit about kind of the maritime history here on the lake. There definitely are some overlapping themes. We start and end each trip with kind of just an overview about the Lake Champlain Basin, understanding a little bit about what that encompasses, and then also we try to finish each trip off with getting folks connected to what are some little things that you could do every day. So there's definitely some crossover, but in terms of the content in the kind of trip sequence, it's definitely quite different. And so I'd say if you're interested in the science and being a little more hands-on in that way, definitely the Lake Champlain Live trip will be probably more up that person's alley.
What do people enjoy about it?
The feedback we get is for folks that work in different professions or don't spend as much time on the lake. This is really eye-opening, and it's a really neat experience. And there's a lot of things that we talk about that folks just haven't had the experience with or haven't heard of, and so it's neat to see folks that aren't enveloped in the world of watershed science kind of get to experience what I experience every day.
Where can people get information about this, and what's the cost of these trips?
For more information, you can visit our website, www.uvm.edu/seagrant. And the kind of restrictions, it's 8 and up, so that's kind of the age that we're looking to get folks. Mainly just we're on the vessel and there are some safety concerns. And then additionally, it's $30 per person, but we have a variety of scholarships available. So if you're interested in participating, please reach out to me for more information.
The boat trips take about 2 hours. They run until mid-August. As Ashley mentioned, check the website for details, uvm.edu/sea grant. Hidden within the lakeshores, hills, and hollows of Vermont are hundreds of rare plants. These flora may only be found in 1 or 2 locations, but that doesn't mean there aren't more out there. Let's join Rebecca Gollin, who shows us where to look for these historic and unusual plants.
Vermont's landscape is full of plants and flowers that even an untrained eye would recognize, such as red clover, sumac, and our state tree, the sugar maple. But look closer, and you might see something a little more unusual.
There's 3 federally endangered plants that have occurred in Vermont.
Botanist Bob Popp works for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, keeping track of the rare and endangered plants in the state.
More or less about 440 that are rare, endangered, and threatened. And of those, there's 161 that are actually legally protected on the endangered and threatened species list.
On this day, Popp is giving a talk at the Rokeby Museum in Ferrisburg, focusing on those plants.
These are not plants that people routinely see because, by definition, they are rare. And some of them occur in 1 or 2 locations in the entire state.
Audience members range from experienced conservation volunteers
Inspired to be a detective. Now that I know what is rare, I want to find more of it.
to interested outdoors enthusiasts.
It would be a good feeling for many rock climbers if they could be out there also looking for habitats and rare plants.
Charlotte resident Gray Beretta is an avid rock climber and wants to know more about identifying what he sees in the woods.
My interest is finding rare, unusual anything in the woods, whether it's a rock formation like they have back here, or the just a combination of trees that you don't normally see. So it's finding how diversity makes and displays itself in the wild, and then kind of trying to bring that back to my work.
Beretta is also a farmer, and this knowledge will inform the way he interacts with the land he works on.
I loved how, as much as we figure out ways as farmers to make something productive every year, it's another reason why we should have diversity.
While some species are becoming more rare because of changes in climate and habitat, Vermont's unique geology is also a contributor.
A lot of these plants in Vermont are rare because they require very, very specialized habitats. And Vermont, as you probably know, and most of your viewers probably know, has a lot of limestone. So we have things like in the Champlain Valley and even on the Waits River Formation in the Connecticut Valley that don't really occur anywhere else in New England.
I am a big picture person, so I go out and look at whole landscapes and patterns and why things grow where they do. And he's good at answering that as well, like connecting the rare plant to calcium in the water that comes from the rocks. So I like the way he tells the stories about these plants.
Alicia Daniel is a naturalist for the city of Burlington. Having rare species in city limits presents challenges for stewardship.
What are the significant rare plants in Burlington? How can we steward them? You know, what do they need? You know, how can we not just run roughshod over where they are? And in our city, there are a number of them, and one of them, for instance, that I have always appreciated is the yellow lady slipper. And so when you get this charismatic, beautiful orchid in your backyard and you get to go out and see it and you feel like you're almost in the tropics or something, it makes you appreciate even the little things that are out there that are unusual and rare.
After the talk, Daniel and plant conservation volunteer Kate Cruzy showed me some examples of rare plants here in Burlington.
Lake Champlain used to be connected to an ocean. We still have relict maritime plants around Lake Champlain.
Cruzy and her fellow volunteers work around Vermont, helping Popp and his colleagues at the Department of Fish and Wildlife identify rare plants and collecting seeds.
I've always been a plant geek my whole life and lived in various corners of Vermont. I work for the New England Wildflower Society as a plant conservation volunteer. And the state botanists, Bob being the senior state botanist, prioritizes what are the rare plant populations they want to confirm are still here in the state, or are they not still here.
The species Cruzy looks for are extremely remote or haven't been seen for many years.
And it's all about finding those natural communities and locations and understanding the natural communities that you see. And so I keep learning and honing those skills. Those are still new skills for me, but they're logical. If you get out there often, you start to see the patterns and know, oh, I have a good chance of finding that creamy vetchling here because this is the same habitat in which I found it before.
And this is a very unusual habitat along freshwater in New England. You see it along ocean coasts, but it's kind of uncommon around lakes. So here we have it, and it's ideal for this particular rare plant.
Cruzy and Daniel both admit that identifying rare plants can be tricky, even for those that, like them, have a lot of experience. Going to talks and field trips with experts like Pop helps stay on top of new discoveries.
It's called the northeastern bulrush because it's pretty much endemic to the Northeast. We do get reports from the public, like amateurs, and we made some great discoveries from just interested amateurs and things who thought they saw something, and in some cases it turns out to be right, and that's kind of awesome.
He showed us that extremely rare plant that someone found along the shores of Lake Champlain, and it's just exciting. It's exciting. Here's something no one saw for 100 years, and then someone found it again. So I'm all about diversity. I love everything that lives here now. I'd love for it to live here in the future, and so his approach to using rare plants kind of as a test of how we're doing in saving our wild world is so important to me.
While many of the plants that are rare in Vermont may be common somewhere outside of the state, Pop says that's not a reason to stop paying attention to what's going on here.
It's part of Vermont's heritage. I mean, these plants have been here, they've maybe always been rare, but if they're gone, then, they're not part of Vermont anymore, and we have to go to New York or the Midwest or Canada to see them. And that would be, to me, that'd be a terrible loss.
It's a treasure hunt through Vermont's landscape that has a prize you can't put a price on. In Ferrisburg, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
There's more information about rare and endangered plants on the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department's website, vtfishandwildlife.com. Once again, thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.